Hello, welcome to my review of the incredibly chunky ZealPC Zephyr. A very, very shiny and heavy and chunky 65% by ZealPC. Now, this had originally run in 2008 and then had a subsequent run after and was available in 4 colors, that being blue, black, red, and gray. What I have here is the red unit, and the red unit I was told was the most rare. And honestly, it's a very nice looking red in person. Now, what makes the Zephyr so special, if you don't know already, is the 5mm PVD brass plate and the huge PVD brass weight. And for those of you that may not know, the original group buy price for this in 2018 was $550, and then the second run was $600, which was unheard of in terms of a 65% for those times. It came in a fixed ANSI layout and has a pretty comfortable 7-degree angle and a 21mm front height without the feet. Now at $550, $600, it's a bit on the expensive side. Is it good? Yes. Is it expensive? Yes. Is it overpriced? Not necessarily. And we'll pop right into the external case review and take a look. Right. Here we are with the external case. Now, first of all, this thing is chunky, and of course, everything is PVD. Well, not everything, but the 5mm plate and the backside is PVD, so it's kind of hard to catch on camera. I mean, I can do this, and you guys can see me. It's literally like a mirror. Look, there's a Simon on the plate. Very rare unit. Now, it's a heavy boy, and when I say heavy, I'm not kidding. This guy comes in at, we'll call it probably 2,400 with caps on, which for the size is pretty heavy, and it feels incredibly chunky in the hand. One of the main design aspects of this, going back to 2018, this was one of the first boards to effectively have a seamless design. I mean, when I say seamless, there is obviously a seam. However, seamless was essentially done by lower end makers and manufacturers at the time to conceal poor anodization matching. However, with this particular keyboard, the anodization matching is pretty damn good. Another feature to note here, obviously, we've got our semi-recessed USB-C port. Normally, I have issues with a recessed port. However, the cutout around it is more than large enough to allow the vast majority of USB cables to be attached without an issue, and it is nearly flush here. Besides that, we've got the obvious kicker, the big old mirror on the back, and we've got 12 visible case screws, and the screws themselves are of a very good quality. At least these guys are. These guys, not so much. The sides are quite unique. I've never seen something like this. Normally with a seamless case, you'll have more of a straight cut on the top piece. This one has more of a triangular cut, which I really like, and that plays nicely with the sloped back. Now the design, the physical case design, was done by Wilba. And if you don't know Wilba, he's the guy that makes all those, crazy PCBs. I don't know whether or not this was his first ever keyboard design, but in my opinion, he kind of knocked the design out of the park. The design for this keyboard is so incredibly ahead of its time. I mean, there are keyboards that still are not as modernized as this one in terms of design aesthetic in 2020. Let's take a look up here. Let me get you guys nice and close. Here we are. And here I am. Now, we've got some holy pandas. This is a friend's keyboard, not my keyboard. I would never be caught dead using holy pandas. Nothing wrong with holy pandas. I just personally dislike them. So here we can see relatively clean chamfer on the external and internal of what I measured to be about 9.5 to 10 millimeter top thickness in terms of the bezel. And then on the side of the board, these guys right here, I measured at about 7 or 7.5. I couldn't get an accurate reading because I was too afraid to scratch it. But it's incredibly cleanly done. It's very simple. All the edges are nicely curved right here. And overall, just spectacular. I mean, the 5 millimeter brass plate really sells it. I personally don't like it, and we'll get into that, but that is my preference. But overall, it's a hell of a looker. Now, the PVD, the quality of the PVD, let me get back over here. The quality of the PVD here is spectacular. I've seen my fair share of terrible PVD, and the PVD application on both the plate and the weight for this keyboard are very, very well done. Now, normally for PVD, you wanna watch out for a few things. You wanna watch out for bubbles. They're not necessarily bubbles, but little raised areas. That can happen quite often. You want to watch for streaking. That can also happen. There's a tiny bit of streaking. If we take a close look here, if you guys see the pattern. So if you look at the reflection looks like it has a pattern in it. However, there is no pattern in the real life reflection. That's not a major deal. Keep in mind, we're looking at this through a macro cam. So like to the human eye, this thing just looks like a big old mirror, which is pretty cool. While we're here on the bottom, these screws here are obviously, pretty high-end aftermarket screws. They look like they're, I can't tell if they're PVD plated. They may as well be stainless steel. And as for these, looks like just standard stainless. We've got custom feet, so not using standard bump-ons, whether it be 8 or 12 or 13 millimeters. This was not the first board to do this. The M65, the first generation, I believe, was the first to do it. However, the M65 had the feet that went all the way across, but these look like they're custom molded. Not 100% sure, but I haven't seen these on another keyboard. The feet are nice. They actually don't take up much vertical space. So I measured this to be 21 millimeter front height without the feet, but only about 22 with the feet. So the feet don't protrude out that much. And as a result, don't really affect your typing experience. All right, back to the top. Everything should be nice and simple here. In terms of the quality of the anodization, the quality of the anodization is good. I have seen better, and Zeal of ZealPC obviously oversaw the manufacturing and did the quality control. I see some minor issues, but nothing major. I'll see if I can get this on camera. It's kind of hard with the lighting. Let me try with the macro cam. We might have a better shot. Let me back it up. Yeah, our issue is going to be lighting. Yeah, definitely. All right, I'll try and explain. There are some what looks like small grains going in this direction. Nothing super major. And then when we look at the large bottom piece, this one I can definitely get on camera. We can see a little bit of streaking here, if you guys can see that right there on camera. Again, this is not a big deal. We're looking at it with a macro cam. In person, the anodization matching is spectacular and the color is really nice. I'm a big fan of lots of reds, but I prefer a slightly darker red, like a 188C, something like this, but this is really, really nice. And then we've got, before we pop into the insides, we've got, all the screw points are recessed, therefore highlighted instead of hiding the screw points. I kind of like that. It means if you're looking at the back, you can actually see the physical screws. I'm totally fine with that design. I think it looks pretty darn cool. There's a little bit of overlap of the bottom piece and top piece, which means you can see a little bit of the bottom piece instead of just the top straight overlapping the bottom or going further than the bottom, which is what a lot of seamless keyboards will do. Again, this thing was incredibly ahead of its time. In terms of the machining, there are some light machining marks here and there, nothing too crazy, like something right there if you guys can see that. Again, not a big deal, but again, like I'm treating this with the respect it deserves as a $600 group buy price keyboard. So obviously, if I was spending 550 to 600 USD out of pocket, these are things I'd be watching out for. Like we could see some light marks here. That's a machining mark right there. Let's see, where else? I mean, there's few bits and pieces. We can see a little bit of anodization strip here, and I don't know if that's from the owner or if it arrived like that. And then there's just small little dings here and there, but every keyboard is going to have small little dings here and there no matter what. If you look close enough and you've got, big enough lens that can pop into macro view, you're obviously going to find a million faults. But overall, I think this thing is fantastic looking. And what we're going to do is we're actually just going to tear this down, take a look at the internals, take a look at the plate, and try and figure out what makes this keyboard tick. All right, here we are. Now, generally I would open this right up, but the first thing I'm going to do is actually take a nice look at the screws. Maybe I'm weird, but I actually really like these screws. Let's take a nice macro view and see what these screws actually look like, because these are pretty fantastic looking screws, I'm not going to lie. Let me try and nail focus. There we go. Here are the screws. Are they in focus? They are now. Look at those. These are fantastic looking screws. I mean, we can see, a little bit of the coating has come off, but that's fairly normal as you thread something. But they're nice. I used a TR4 tool to open up the case, and I don't know why I'm talking about the screws, but there's nothing like nice screws. I've had my fair share of keyboards that just came with absolutely terrible screws, and you had to replace the screws down the line, and that's just a big pain in the ass when the manufacturer or a group buy runner can essentially just provide decent screws, and those decent screws cost them pennies on the dollar compared to, you buying a very small quantity. So I appreciate small little things like this. Obviously, for the price point, I expect lots of small little things like this, and we'll get to those. So let's get those screws out of the way, and let us take a look at the internals. Here's the case bottom. Bam. I've pulled it out and we can see, finally, the truth. The truth has been illuminated. This is a sandwich mount keyboard. By technicality only. Yes, it is technically a sandwich mount. However, it feels and sounds absolutely nothing like a sandwich mount. But the plate is sandwiched by the screwing of the case bottom into the case top, using obviously the alignment cutouts here where the plate tabs go, and then on the case bottom there are reverse tabs that are in the shape of the tabs of the plate and that push them into the top case. So by technicality, it is a tabbed sandwich mount. However, like I said, it feels a lot more like an integrated plate, obviously, because 5mm brass and whatnot. All right, let's run through the case, then we'll take a look at the plate and PCB. Now, the internals of this are a little bit dirty. I mean, shouldn't matter. You can see the machining marks. Again, this is internal case. Not a problem. However, I have seen, far cheaper keyboards avoid this. It is somewhat easily avoidable. So we've mentioned that all of these little tabs here will essentially push on the plate and connect it to the top case, while these little cutouts, these little, well, not triangular, well, technically triangular cuts here will align with the triangular cuts here to firmly seal the board. I think this is one of the most interesting methods I've ever seen for mounting a case top to a case bottom. Now, generally, like what you'll do is either you'll go pure flat or you'll have alignment pillars or alignment tabs. But in this case, these guys here go into these slots, creating alignment tabs, and then these guys here also go into these slots, creating alignment tabs. So this keyboard potentially has the most alignment tabs of any keyboard I have ever seen, because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 individual alignment tabs that rely on the internal geometry to align the keyboard. What that means is it's gonna fit together really well, and you can kind of feel that when you use it. It feels incredibly dense and sturdy, because I mean, obviously it is incredibly dense per its weight and its size, but it feels incredibly sturdy. What we can see here is that the case sides essentially don't make much contact with anything else, which is very good from a design perspective, especially for acoustics. And generally, we tend to avoid, having alignment pillars and screws on the sides and whatnot, especially for a sandwich mount, because it messes with the plate flex. In this case, obviously, there is no plate flex. We're talking about a 5mm plate here. So, I mean, so far, quite interesting. Here we can see the cutout for the USB-C connection. And we can see there is a tiny bit of a hole here just to comfortably allow the USB-C con to just sit flush here, which is, it's very cute. I love it. I love all these little minute design details that, a lot of people don't do. And obviously all these little minute design details, like these cuts and this little cut here, all of these add to the cost of machining, which, is one of the reasons why the price point was where it was. It is incredibly complex. And remember, this thing came out in 2018, which means the design was probably 2017 to 2018. And if I pull out other keyboards that I have from 2017 to 2018, they will have old, terrible PCBs, super basic case mounting. Most of them will be seamed. The seamless variations of keyboards were not as well defined as this. The mounting type will be incredibly simple, and so forth. You get the idea. But internals at the bottom look quite cute. The weight screws in from the outside, so it's a pure external weight. I'm not sure about the thickness. I really want to avoid unscrewing these screws, as I can see a little bit of corrosion on one of them. Now that has to do with living where I live, where there's incredibly high humidity and everything just corrodes really quickly. But overall, case bottom internals look pretty darn good. Now let's take a look at the case top. And just like the case bottom, that's a lot of fucking machining. Look at that. Look at it go. Pretty cool. We can see that essentially what the plate should do is just pressure fit more or less with a little bit of tolerance to the case top while being pushed by the case bottom. There isn't much going on with the case top here. I mean, after holding the plate and holding the case bottom, this feels incredibly light, because it's the one thing that isn't full of brass. But overall, it's super clean. The machining is clean. The internal anodization is clean. I don't even see any hook marks from the ano. I see like maybe one here, but that's it. And that's a strong maybe. That could have just been during the screw tapping at the manufacturer. But yeah, that's the case top. Nothing really going on here. We've got the little cutout here to allow for a semi-flush USB-C on the case bottom. Not bad. Now we want to talk about the plate. but this is already built. Luckily, I have another plate. All right, prepare your eyes. Here we are. It is very, very, very shiny. This plate's a little dirty, but hey, look, it's me. Do you guys see me? Simon in the plate. All right, so this is the plate, and the plate is just under 5 millimeters thick by a tiny bit. I've measured it a few times. I got 4.9, I got 4.8. My calipers are terrible, so I know it's slightly under 5 millimeters. We can see the machining here to allow it to fit into the case top, and then we can see a tiny bit of a cutout here just to play nice with the case top. Pretty cute overall. Very, very cute. Now, obviously, this is a fixed ANSI plate. We'll take a look at the PCB, but it makes a lot of sense if you're going 5 millimeter and you're going incredibly dense in terms of typing feel. It makes sense. I mean, no ISO support is kind of sad, but realistically, this was already such a niche board. I wouldn't think many people in the EU or other ISO users would actually have shown interest back in 2018 for something this expensive. Maybe I'm wrong. In terms of the layout support, the only real layout support you had was split backspace. Everything else was fairly standard. All the cutouts are 1U, including the spacebar, including the bottom row modifiers. You obviously had the choice for a stepped or a non-stepped caps lock, which is nice to see. But it's wild. It is a very, very wild plate. Now there's some engravings on the plate, and we'll cut in nice and close so you guys can see what those look like. Don't mind my fingerprints, but we've got right here engraved into the brass, Zephyr. That's pretty cool looking. This is on the left side of the spacebar switch cutout. And then on the right side, we've got the Wilba Tech logo and the Zeal logo. I think his logo might be different now, but right there is the Zeal logo. Now, the same basic... Well, I mean, okay, I have the same basic takeaway from the PVD here that I do on the weights. The PVD is pretty darn well done. It's incredibly shiny. This plate, like I said, is kind of dirty, but this one is not. This one is basically a mirror surface. I don't see any bubbles. I don't see any streaks. Actually, the plate looks like it's been done far better than the weight. However, this can be because the weight has had direct access to, touching things and maybe got a little scratched up, whereas the plate did not. But overall, the PVD is spectacular. And of course, the only plate option was the 5 millimeter brass. Now, for me, I like my keyboards flexy, and this obviously is not flexy. In terms of typing feel, this feels like more or less an integrated plate, like a 3 to 4 millimeter integrated plate, whether it be aluminum or steel or God knows what. A lot of people like that, and I'm okay with that. Like, this just isn't my cup of tea personally. If I bought a Zephyr, the first thing I would be doing is maybe looking for a 5 millimeter polycarbonate or a 5 millimeter acrylic, assuming it was possible. Not to manufacture, but to work nicely with the entirety of the build, just to at least soften up the typing experience a little bit. But again, one of the major selling points is this. This plate right here was not cheap to manufacture, and most importantly, not cheap to finish. PVDing something like this is not an easy task. PVD overall is kind of an annoying process with a pretty high failure rate, especially on brass. Now, if we look at the backside, we can see some interesting stuff. Now, Zeal advertised a pretty unique feature in this plate, and it was called, wait for it, anti-stabilizer wire popping out technology, which I just love. It's the dumbest name, but it's not dumb if it works, and it works. So the way that it works is the wire cutout is set to exactly where your spacebar wire would be. which means if you were using a set of stabilizers that was notorious for the wire trying to pop out, whether it be Zeal or Duroc or, well, old generation Zeal, new generation Duroc, or just, I don't know, terrible stabilizers in general, this will actually help to prevent the wire from popping out, as the wire has nowhere to go, which is pretty interesting. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure how that works on the 2U wires, but I'm fairly certain a decent amount of design went into it to like actually prevent these guys from popping out as well. A lot of people think it's incredibly silly, but it is what it is. Additionally, while looking at the back side of the plate, we can see a tiny little divot here again for the USB port, which again is super, super cute. This is just like 1 millimeter or maybe 1.5 millimeters deep, if that, just to allow the USB-C port to just fit in flush without needing to be bent at all. I think that's just fantastic. These are the things that made me love this board. And yes, I do love this board. I don't particularly like typing on it because the plate is not for me, but just things like this where you see the small little machining marks, or not machining marks, the small little machining portions with such a high attention to detail to just allow tolerances to sit just right. I find that incredibly, incredibly nice. Now, technically, as seen by the switch cutouts, these switches are kind of switch top removable. They're not really. I mean, you have to go pretty wide to actually make that, feasible. Another thing to consider is that at this thickness, the switches do not actually clip properly into the plate. So what Wilba has gone ahead and done in his design is allow these tiny little portions that are machined into each switch cutout to be able to allow the switch to clip in. I can give you guys a little bit of an example. Here we have a, oh god, I don't even know what kind of switch this is, but let's just put it in there. So as we put it in, and let me get you guys up on the macro view. As we get it in, sorry guys, I'm working backwards here. There we go. These little portions here and here actually clip into the plate. Let me see if I can get you an actual functional angle. Yeah, there we go. So you can see a tiny portion of the switch there is actually capable of clipping in. Again, small little thing, such high attention to detail. So, see, I have difficulty pushing this out as it is technically clipped into the plate, which is super cool. I believe this was one of the first thicker plates to do it. However, obviously don't quote me on that. It completely depends. The design process is very long and arduous, and somebody could have done it before. Who knows? But yeah, that's the plate. The plate is fantastic. It's fantastic to look at. It's fantastic from an engineering perspective and from a design perspective. I personally hate typing on it, but that's me. Yep, now the switch is just not going to come out unless I get a switch puller. All right, let's take a look at the PCB next. All right, it goes without saying. It really should go without saying that this is a Wilba PCB, and it is fantastic. Every Wilba PCB I've personally tried has been fantastic. It looks fantastic. It has something that I appreciate very, very much. The keys are marked. The 3 is 3. The F is F. Everything is perfect. That way, if you have an issue with a particular switch, you know exactly where to go without having to, memorize the exact location of each individual switch. Super nice. The traces are done very artistically and very cleanly, going primarily in horizontal lines. And I assume on the other side of the PCB, you'll be able to see the verticals being done. So this is a special version of the Zeal 65 PCB. I think this was specifically it's this version. I don't know what this says. But according to Zeal, it is this special version of the Zeal 65 PCB. And there it is, 2018 Zeal. Well, I mean, Wilbur, but 2018 Zeal. It's pretty good looking. Honestly, it's pretty good looking. We've actually got a physical hardware reset switch, which I appreciate. It's not absolutely necessary, especially with boards like this that you know now support VIA. But I think that's fantastic. You've got your oh, that's interesting. You've got quite a few pinouts here. Let's take a look. Let's take a look nice and close. Let me pop out the macro cam, just so we guys can check out the glory of this PCB. Alrighty, please do not mind my soldering, as well as the soldering of the previous person who built this PCB. But look at that. Let's take a look at the controller area. I really like the controller area. Look how fantastic that looks. Let me try and nail focus. There we go. Sorry guys. Look at that. Look how gorgeous that is. Look how gorgeous that is. With the traces going off horizontally across the keyboard. Now, obviously, if you haven't noticed already, it's very, very clear. What we've got here is a keyboard with per key RGB. Per key RGB in a custom board is wild. Let me show you guys what that looks like. Now, obviously, these are not translucent switch housings, but it'll give you an idea. There we go, look at that. We've got individually addressable, per key, RGB, and obviously these are surface mount instead of, you know, in switch. That's bloody fantastic. I mean, I'm not a big RGB guy, not my thing. But the simple fact that this PCB supports all of that this PCB was USB-C in 2018, that has notations, that has beautiful routing like this, which, I mean, off the bat, I believe it was QMK support before VIA became such a huge thing, but now it's fully supported in VIA. Look at that. It is gorgeous. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous PCB. Obviously, you've got your locations for PCB mounting your switches. These are holy pandas, which means they only mount to the plate. But overall, that's the internals. The internals are super, super clean. Here we can see that the little cutout on the plate that I was talking about earlier actually allows a tiny little bit of this PCB area of the main board to just overlap a little, just to give a little bit of extra support to the USB-C connector. I love it. I find it so incredibly cute, and I love all these tiny little design decisions. Honestly, I really do. I mean, that's pretty much it. The anti-stabilizer popping out technology, although incredibly silly, actually works. So therefore, it's not silly. The PCB is spectacular. The plate is spectacularly made. And the design is just one of a kind. I mean, how many plates do you have that you can do this to? And you can have two Simons on the screen at the same time. That's some next level stuff. All right, that's pretty much it. We'll pop into a typing test. And then we'll go ahead and take a look at our summary. All right, let's do a little bit of real talk. So when the Zephyr had originally come out, I had made fun of it. I had made a lot of fun of it because back in 2018, something like 550 to 600 USD for a keyboard of any size was kind of unheard of, unless you were looking at purchasing a secondhand Corsa or something. Well, I mean, it was more than that, but I had made fun of it for the price point, and I had made fun of it for being one of the first boards, obviously not the first, but one of the first boards to go out there and go for a super thick plate. And I had assumed it would be a bad board. I was wrong. The Zephyr is a super, super nice board. It's fantastic. It is a fantastic board. The design is so ahead of its time. The weight is huge. I mean, this hurts just holding it. It's not for me. The 5mm plate is not for me. The crazy amount of PVD is not for me, but I appreciate what it is. And it is a absolutely fantastic board. Now, in terms of the design that Wilba had put into this, again, so incredibly ahead of its time. I mean, look at that. Look how shiny that is. You guys can lift, like, I can give you a tour of my house on the weight of this keyboard. It's kind of wild. But it's nice. It's nice. It had a lot of nice little touches. Now, one of the nice little touches that maybe you would appreciate, but for me it doesn't really matter, was the packaging. Packaging was pretty cute. You have these little tabs. Lift it up. The plate goes perfectly in there. Board goes in there. Switches go in there. I assume this is where you hide your weed. But like, this was a nice little touch. Again, back in 2018, you were lucky to get a keyboard that was well packaged in the first place, and this was a super nice little touch. A lot of the small design decisions to cut like 1mm out of here so this sits perfectly flush is spectacular, because the amount of the sheer amount of keyboards that I've seen where the USB cutout will just contact the plate and bend because they're too lazy to cut a piece out of the plate. Or same thing with the case, where it'll just pressure fit on the case bottom and then be shoved near the cutout instead of just slicing a little bit off so it just sits cleanly. And in terms of just cleanly, the edges are clean, the corners are clean, the finishing is clean. Zeal, who oversaw manufacturing and QC and all of that, did a pretty darn good job. Obviously, the anodization is not S tier, but it is A tier for sure. In terms of design, this thing gets a huge thumbs up for me. In terms of the final delivered product, huge thumbs up for me. In terms of the price point, I mean, we all know about the Zeal tax. Everybody knows about the Zeal tax. We all know that Zeal switches don't cost 70 cents to make. They likely don't cost 15 to make at a large enough MOQ. So we kind of assumed that the Zephyr would kind of suffer from the same effect, where he'd maybe throw in a little bit of that money into the manufacturing and finishing, but it turns out he actually put a decent amount into the manufacturing and finishing. For 2018, specifically for 2018 standards, this by far could have been, I'm not sure, but could have been the best finished and designed board up to its release date. Now, obviously, we've got a lot of interesting stuff coming out from a lot of people, and they're going crazy with design and manufacturing, but back in the day, 2018, this was fantastic. Now, another major issue I personally have with it is the 5mm plate. It's not for me. I like a nice soft plate when I type. 5mm brass is not that. To me, it kind of feels like, I'm just slamming my fingers directly on the table. But if you like a nice stiff plate, that's fantastic. If you don't, and you have some means of getting a 5mm plastic plate of some kind that'll actually fit in this, that would be amazing. Overall though, this is a keyboard that I was so incredibly wrong about. This is a fantastic keyboard. And this keyboard has probably surprised me more than any other keyboard ever. And I've said that about like 3 boards now, but this one, #1 in surprising Simon, for sure. This thing caught me by surprise. I mean, again, like I can't use it. For me, it's unusable, but it's fantastic. I wish I had one just to like put in the key in it. Just put it right there, and probably never type on it like all of my other keyboards. But yeah, that's the Zephyr. Like, big thumbs up to Zeal. I never thought I'd say that. And huge thumbs up to Wilbur for getting something like this made. It is fantastic. You should consider at the very least trying one if you have the opportunity, or at the very least seeing one in person. In person, it's a looker. In person, it really is a looker. Like the PVD is just insane, both on the plate and on the back, and the heft is just wild. Anyway, I'll shut up. That's my Zephyr review. I give it a 1 Simon thumb and another Simon thumb, and that's it. Consider dropping a sub if you like keyboard stuff. Consider liking the video if you like the video. Consider disliking the video if you hate me. Love you guys. I'll see you guys in the next video. Or $600, 60%. Fucking 65%, you fucking idiot! Alrighty, so, Zephyr. I'm on the run, fucking microphone! Black, red, gray, and blue? God fucking fuck. This board had originally come in 4 colors and has had 2 runs. And I don't know when the fuck the runs are. Why don't I fucking do research?